Today I wanted to talk to you about politics in fitness. And I'm not talking about like the internal politics of any particular fitness organizations. I'm talking about how actual, right versus left politics seems to have corresponded on to certain types of exercise, certain movements in fitness, and how that's a bad thing. So first of all, let me explain kind of my meta-political theory. I don't know if you've caught on to this yet, but basically the two factions in America, it's going to correspond to the Democrats and the Republicans. In other countries, obviously, you'll have a different setup. But basically, these two factions are essentially controlled by the same interest, which is, of course, the wealthy and powerful. And this group has, of course, a very different interest than the voter bases on either of these sides. Now, the voter bases on either of these sides themselves have somewhat different interests than each other, but more or less they probably on the whole have somewhat more of an interest in common than with the billionaire political donor class, right? But of course what that means is you're going to have a situation where the politicians in charge and the people that they are protecting and serving really don't want to give their voter base is what they actually want. Now, obviously, the easiest and best way to win elections, if you just want to win an election, would be to just try to give the people that you're trying to get votes from the most of what they want that you can, right? I mean, obviously, that's who you're going to vote for. If you're trying to appeal to, say, environmentalists, you would campaign on, and when you get in office, you do your best to actually institute environmental protections, right? But obviously, if you're getting all your money and in many ways depending on people who profit from not having those protections in place, that's not an option. To give you a good example of just how this works in practice, let's consider a wealthy factory farmer. That's going to be our example, okay? Now, to make the maximum profits, he wants to be able to externalize as many costs as he can. This can mean runoff and pollution into the waterways, polluting the environment, potentially skirting, health and safety guidelines, maybe not putting out the best product possible, possibly putting consumers at risk. And he also wants the cheapest labor possible, so he has an incentive to want a class of people that he can pay below the minimum wage, or even have a lower minimum wage. So he's got a lot of interest, and obviously he's got a lot of money, right? So the way it works is you have essentially one party is going to say that they're against half of the things this guy wants, but secretly, take a fall in actual politics and let the other side win. The other side is going to take the other half of those issues, pretend they're against those, take the fall. So the right wing is typically going to claim that they're against immigration because the right wing voter base tends to want less illegal immigration, and that's a big selling point, right? If you claim that you're against illegal immigration, you're probably going to get a lot of right wing votes. But of course, if you actually do something about illegal immigration, you're going to make the wealthy donors angry because they like having a class that they can, let's face it, they're in a lot of cases paying these people illegally under the table below minimum wage. And these people can't speak out about it because they're illegal. I mean, they're essentially an imported, almost serf class. I mean, they're obviously not real slaves, but there's a very, very similar dynamic where you're importing people from another country to work for cheaper than you could get your natives to work. It's, economically, it's not entirely dissimilar to slavery. So obviously, this is something that the wealthy interests want, and some people on the right say that there are negative costs to society for doing this, but these costs are, of course, externalized on society. They're not borne by the wealthy interest, right? So, the right wing is, of course, going to claim that they're very much against illegal immigration and that they want to curtail it, and they're going to put some half-hearted attempts in, but then as you certainly saw in the last administration, when it actually comes down to it, they're just going to say, well, you know what, we tried, but unfortunately those pesky Democrats prevented us from doing what we wanted to do. We're so sorry, but you got to vote for us next time if you want any actual action on illegal immigration. And of course that never happens, right? Because it's all those pesky Democrats somehow are always going to win that one. But then on the flip side, the same wealthy factory farmer also wants to be able to use the cheapest production methods that he possibly can, which is going to include, polluting the environment whenever he feels like doing so, right? He doesn't want to have to control, water runoff, pesticides. He doesn't want to have to worry about what chemicals he's using, just the cheapest possible of everything, right? And if some of that ends up in the food and food quality is not so good, that's also something that's beneficial to him because he wants to just cut his bottom line so he can take home the most profits he possibly can. And here it's going to be the Democrats that claim that they are in favor, of environmental regulations, stopping him from polluting the environment that we all share to take home profits, right? That's something that they always claim. But of course we see whenever they get in office, somehow those Republicans that were completely toothless when it came to immigration, suddenly those Republicans are extremely powerful, when it comes to actual meaningful environmental reform. They seem to be able to, they seem to be able to stop environmental reform in its tracks. And what you see from this kind of simple little example is that the political parties are at their weakest when they're trying to do what their actual voter base wants, and they're at their strongest when they're doing what their moneyed interests want. And they play off each other. It's a lot like pro wrestling. It's all fake. They go drink at the same bars together afterwards. They're friends. They cooperate, but they have to put on an act while they're facing the camera, right? Now, however, because they are not actually giving their voter bases what they want, they have a problem, which is, how do you actually get the voters to even show up and vote? Because you still need voters to show up and vote. I mean, I don't think they're doing fraud on such a level that they can just avoid actually having voters. Maybe someday they'll get to that point, but I think at this point they genuinely do still want to actually get votes and win elections. So, what they seem to have figured out is that you don't actually have to give your voters anything that they want. If you can just make sure that your voters hate the other side enough that even if they don't like you very much or think you're going to do anything, they hate the other side more than they hate you. And I think they're playing into this, honestly, intentionally. I think they're starting to put more and more people out there that are going to be hated by the opposite side as a way to prop up the other side, even though realistically there's nothing that the voter base actually likes about their guy. They just hate the other guy so much that they're going to vote for him anyway. You see this with candidates like, honestly, Donald Trump. Whether you like him or not, you have to agree that he really, really polarized the Democrat base, and they would have voted for anyone, who came out there against Donald Trump because they absolutely hated the guy. So he was an extremely good, they call him pro wrestling, heel candidate, someone that is out there to play a character that you hate, and Donald Trump was a fantastic heel. I mean, he really fired up the Democrats. I'm not trying to take sides here in any way, say who I voted for. Actually, I didn't, but anyway, I'm not taking sides at all, but obviously Joe Biden is not somebody that inspired a whole lot of passion. I think that's going to be an uncontroversial statement. I don't think the Democrats were especially happy about voting for him. But when you have somebody like Trump out there that really just antagonizes them, they're going to just hold their noses and pull the lever. And so that's how the Democrats get away with getting elected, even though they're not actually giving their base a lot of what their base actually wants. And you obviously see the same thing with the other side. I mean, I think Kamala Harris particularly made recent comments about Memorial Day. It is Memorial Day, by the way. Happy Memorial Day. I'd like to remember George Patton today for his moral courage and for being killed for what he believed in. But anyway, yeah, on Memorial Day recently, Kamala Harris put out a tweet just saying enjoy your 3-day weekend, which is something like that, which was of course horribly offensive to to the right wing, which takes Memorial Day very seriously and treats it as being about remembering fallen heroes, as it should be. And like, was this tone deaf? Was this this, she knew exactly what she was doing, and she's probably about as deep system as anyone. And I'm not taking sides left or right here, but she's definitely a system person. And I honestly do see this as a move that was calculated to antagonize Republicans and just have them hate her so much that they'll be energized to support Republican system candidates, even if they're really lukewarm about those candidates. Because honestly, the Republican Party is in a little bit of crisis right now. The Republicans are just doing absolutely nothing that their base wants whatsoever. So they're really in a little bit of a crisis to try to figure out, how are we going to get these people to actually show up on election day and support us when we're not doing anything for them. And I think it requires the Democrats to step in a little bit and just be so absolutely hateable that the Republicans can actually have a chance. And the Democrats actually need the Republicans. It's a very symbiotic relationship, because remember, the Republicans are the excuse that the Democrats have to be able to provide for why they never actually provide meaningful change on anything that they are claiming that they're supposed to be about, So, I hope that little example, we're already 11 minutes into this video and I haven't even talked about fitness. Oh my God. Well, let me get started with fitness. So I've noticed that a lot of health concerns in fitness seem to have been very much associated with the left, kind of a hippie sort of thing. Things like movement, flexibility, cardiovascular health, natural eating, good organic, healthy food. All that stuff seems to have been associated very much with the left. And they, when people that are more on the left get into fitness, it tends to be, and things like that. They tend to like yoga, cardio, anything that's more, flexibility, cardio, naturalistic, things like that. And they seem to be very much encouraged to reject anything about strength and appearance. They don't like much strength training. They seem to have issues with doing anything that's going to make them look better. They seem to think that strength is something to kind of be mocked as like insecure or something to that effect. You just see what your tribe is doing, and they're not doing strength, and they kind of they kind of tend to mock anyone that's interested in either strength or appearance as either being vain or insecure or something to that effect, right? And on the right, of course, you see the flip side. When right-wingers get into exercise, it definitely tends to be either strength training or bodybuilding. They're either trying to look as lean and muscular as they can, or just get as strong as possible. And they tend to really just mock health concerns. Crunchy granola, you're eating organic? Nah, I'm just going to take steroids and powerlift. I'm not saying every powerlifter or everyone who takes steroids is right-wing, but right-wingers tend to just be interested in strength at the expense of health. They mock flexibility, they mock cardio, they mock concerns about, eating wholesome organic food. They tend to mock concerns about staying natural, not putting chemicals in their body. So you end up ultimately with right-wingers that are strong for a while and die young, and kind of normalize having lots of aches and pains, and maybe not even the best health even while they are strong in some limited ways. And you tend to have more left-wingers who are probably going to live for a long time, but what a half-life, they're not going to put on a whole lot of muscle mass. They're not even going to want to put on a whole lot of muscle mass, so they'll probably live to 90 but be very feeble about it, right? And that's for the ones that are health conscious. Obviously, you have people that are not health conscious on both sides. And it really does seem like, I don't know, I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I don't think people are sitting, in dark rooms, coming up with this stuff. But I do think it serves the fitness industry well. And I think it may have been something that's kind of evolved because it works for them. To give each side only half of the tools that they need to really maximize their own performance, because ultimately mobility and, actual health work synergistically with strength to make you a more, functional and strong person. I mean, back in the day when this stuff was developing organically and just, strength athletes were just naturally figuring out what worked, they were very into mobility, They were exceedingly flexible. They didn't shy away from movements that required flexibility, and as a result, they got strong in ways that we just don't see today, And they were also all very concerned with the quality of their food. They didn't think it was, hippie to, want to get wholesome natural foods that were, well raised and things, because, food quality was an issue back then as well. And they seem to have a much more well-rounded perspective, and it showed. They were just very capable people in a way that we don't see today. And because now you're only getting half of the picture, you're going to have some issues, and the issues that you have are going to lead you to various profitable industries. You're going to be more interested in supplements to help with joint pain if you aren't doing all the mobility work that you need. Maybe if you're only doing a few brute strength exercises and not branching out into more of the mobility stuff, your gains are going to get cut short, and you're going to probably want to go to the pharmaceutical industry, maybe hop on a cycle of TRT because you're not getting all the results you want, On the flip side, I mean, there's a massive like health product market for more crunchy granola types. Not that granola is a health food by any means, And I mean, there's both sides buy supplements. They're just very different ones. The right wingers are, buying supplements that are supposed to give them more gains. The left wingers are buying, hippie health stuff. But honestly, if they all just kind of work, if they all just used, the whole spectrum, kind of developed some synergistic health, they'd be stronger, better looking, more healthy, more mobile, feeling good. They probably wouldn't have nearly such a desire for more that they do now. I mean, I have not gotten nearly into the mobility stuff as much as I need to, but I'm really happy with where I am. I obviously want to get better, but I have very little motivation to go to any kind of industry and ask for a crutch to help me get more, because I'm pretty happy, And again, I'm not saying that anyone's sitting down thinking about this stuff, but I think there is a sort of evolution that goes on in industries where what works, what makes profits, does tend to prosper and get spread, So I think some kind of a force, similar to evolution, where, what works spreads and what doesn't dies out, it is happening here, and that's kind of why this dynamic has evolved. There's probably no better example now to me than, the carnivore versus vegan thing. Obviously, carnivore tends to be more right-leaning, vegan tends to be more left-leaning. And really, I mean, I'm not really in favor of either one. I obviously tend more towards carnivore than vegan, but I think ultimately meat's probably more important than vegetables, but it really is. To me, carnivore really is just like the rolling coal. The guys that have the big diesel trucks that are rigged up to just produce massive clouds of smoke because they hate Priuses so much. It's honestly the rolling coal of the fitness industry. We get it, you're right wing, but you don't have to. You're really just showing your allegiance to a side that really doesn't care about you or your interests. And honestly, if you just checked out, you'd be a lot better off physically. And honestly, the country would be better off, because none of this stuff would work if people wouldn't just show up and pull the lever for whatever candidate they hate least. You know, if you actually just stay home when you're not getting something you want, then they'd actually have to give us something in order to get our votes. That was really long. I don't even know if I'm going to post this because it's quite a lot, but I don't know. You let me know if something like this is something you're interested in, or if you'd rather me just not be quite so long-winded and just talk about fitness. All right, thanks for watching if you got this far. Signing off.